The arena pulsed like a living thing, lit by a storm of flashbulbs, the noise of thousands compressing into a single, restless breath. The canvas gleamed under the spotlights, every corner sharp, the ropes tight and humming faintly with anticipation. Reporters leaned forward with cameras raised, lenses glinting like eyes waiting to devour whatever happened next. Then Tyson leaned into the microphone, his grin wide and sharp, the grin of a man who knew exactly how to cut flesh without raising his fists. "Look at him," Tyson said, turning his head just enough so the crowd and every camera could see his eyes dart toward Chuck. "An old, rusty legend. That's what you are, Norris. Rust. A relic. You belong in a museum, not in my ring." The words fell heavy. The arena didn't laugh at once, it inhaled. Then came the noise, whistles, cheers, jeers tangled together. A chant for Tyson started in one section, drowned almost immediately by boos in another. The faces in the crowd told the real story, jaws open, brows furrowed, people not sure if they'd just heard something scripted or something that cut deeper. Tyson smirked wider, feeding off it. He prowled a step closer, the mic brushing against his lips, his free hand flexing as if he were already measuring a skull in his fist. "This is a new era, Chuck. Men like me eat men like you for breakfast. Fast. You think anybody here came to watch a cowboy kick? No, they came for Tyson. They came for real blood." He laughed, that distinct rasp, half amusement, half menace. The front rows erupted, some cheering, others booing. Someone shouted, "Break him, Mike," and the cameras swung instantly to catch the face, plastering it across the jumbotron. The man grinned, drunk on the moment. Through it all, Norris didn't move. He sat straight on his stool in his corner, arms loose across his knees, head slightly bowed. The camera found him and stayed there longer than normal, desperate for reaction. The lens drank in every detail, the faint shadows under his eyes, the calm line of his mouth, the kind of stillness that wasn't passivity but something coiled and aware. He wasn't a statue. He was waiting. And waiting, in this atmosphere, was louder than any insult. Tyson raised his chin, hearing the restless energy twist tighter. He barked another line into the mic, "You hear me, old man? You're just a meme people laugh at on the internet. I'm the one they fear. You got no place in this ring, not anymore." That did it, the arena broke into a chaos of sound. Half the crowd clapped and stomped for Tyson, swept up in his raw bravado. The other half jeered, some pointing at Norris as if daring him to stand up, others screaming Tyson's name like a prayer. The wave of noise surged and ebbed, filling every space. Still, Norris didn't speak. His silence thickened, dragging the laughter down into unease. A camera zoomed close, his eyes lifted at last, steady, unflinching. He looked across the canvas at Tyson, not blinking, not smirking, not giving anything away. It was the look of someone who had no need to argue. The effect was unsettling. In the crowd, a woman stopped cheering mid-sentence, her hand frozen halfway in the air. A man in a Tyson shirt lowered his phone, suddenly aware he was holding his breath. The laughter that had chased Tyson's words began to sputter. The crowd wasn't sure anymore if they were laughing at Norris, or with him. The pause stretched. Tyson shifted his weight, pacing near the ropes, his smirk twitching under the lights. For the first time in the night, he looked like he was filling silence instead of commanding it. The cameras knew what they had. They split-screened, Tyson pacing, shoulders rolling, smile sharp, Norris still, eyes locked, a kind of quiet that read not as weakness but as defiance carved in stone. The contrast was too clear to ignore. Then Tyson slammed the mic back into its stand, lips pulled tight in a grin that showed more teeth than joy. The roar swelled again, people wanted the fight, wanted the release of fists after words. But somewhere in that restless crowd, in the hum of flashbulbs and stomped bleachers, everyone understood they had just witnessed the first strike. And it hadn't been a punch. It was a sentence, loud and cruel, thrown like a blade, "You don't belong here." Yet the only reply was a stare that said, without speaking, "Try me." The noise of the arena rose higher, louder, heavier, until it was almost unbearable. Reporters jostled for better angles, voices shrill over their headsets. A producer hissed to his cameraman, "Stay on, Chuck. Stay there." The lens zoomed one more inch on that unshaken face. Tyson lifted his arms to soak in the chaos, bouncing lightly on his feet, the predator grin back on his lips. And Norris didn't move. That was when the first ripple of doubt hit the crowd. "Where are you watching from? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel." The host's mic tried to pull the arena back under control, but Tyson had no intention of yielding. He paced along the ropes like a predator marking territory, shoulders rolling, jaw clenched, every gesture amplified by the fever of the crowd. Light hit the sweat already forming on his forehead, turning it into a glittering mask. He stopped, tilted his head toward Chuck's corner, and smirked. "Tell me, cowboy," he said, voice rasping through the speakers, "how does it feel to sit in my ring? You're not a fighter anymore, you're a museum piece. An exhibit. I should be charging admission to look at you." The crowd roared, some in delight, some in outrage. The split screen on the Jumbotron showed Tyson strutting, his lips curled into mockery, while Norris remained still on his stool. The stillness wasn't fatigue, it was refusal. He sat with his elbows on his knees, gaze steady, expression unreadable. His trainers hovered nearby, towels in hand, but he hadn't asked for water, hadn't even shifted his weight. He looked like a man with nothing to waste. Tyson went further. He hunched over, bent his knees, and mimed a shaky shuffle, one hand trembling as though clutching an invisible cane. He exaggerated each step, puffing into the mic like an old man gasping for air. The arena erupted in laughter, cheap, wild, instant. Phones lifted by the hundreds, blue screens lighting the stands. In seconds, clips were already streaming out into the world. Hashtags began to form before the routine even ended. On the big screen, Tyson held his bent pose, tapping the mat with his cane, eyes sparkling with cruel delight. "See? That's what you are, Chuck. A relic. A weak old man." The audience laughed louder, but cracks appeared. A man in a Norris t-shirt crossed his arms and shook his head. A woman in the third row lowered her phone, suddenly uncomfortable. The building was divided, half drunk on Tyson's antics, half unsettled by how far he pushed it. Then Tyson leaned close to the mic, voice sharp. "Tell me you've got more than a stare. Or is that all that's left of the legend?" The cameras swung instantly to Norris. The crowd hushed on instinct. He rose. Not quickly, not slow, simply rose, and the noise scattered like startled birds. His corner man reached for the stool, Norris waved him off with the faintest flick of his fingers. He stepped forward one pace, hands loose at his sides, eyes level. A boom mic lowered above him. He didn't test it, didn't ask for it. When he spoke, his voice was calm, steady, almost quiet. "Strength without respect," he said, "is just weakness." It landed like a nail through wood. The words spread outward in ripples. The front rows froze. In the middle tiers, people stopped filming without realizing their thumbs had moved. The caption delay flickered on the Jumbotron, "Strength without respect is just weakness." Seeing it written, plain and inescapable, gave it more weight than Tyson's entire routine. Applause burst from a pocket near the aisle. Another group booed them. The collision of noise made the floor vibrate. Then, from somewhere high in the seats, a chant started, low, raw, imperfect, "Chuck. Chuck." It caught, ragged but undeniable, rising in defiance of the jeers. Tyson tried to smother it. "Cute fortune cookie," he barked, forcing laughter into his voice. He pumped his fists overhead, running a circuit of the ring, pounding his heels into the canvas. The noise followed him but faltered. A strange silence hung behind him, following like a shadow. Cameras cut to his face, catching the tiny twitch at the edge of his mouth, the split-second flicker of irritation that bravado couldn't fully cover. He shouted again, louder. Whisper louder, Chuck. The ref needs to hear your surrender. But Norris didn't even look at him. He let his eyes sweep across the crowd instead, landing on people who had risen to their feet, on strangers chanting his name. And then he gave the smallest nod, nothing more. It wasn't defiance. It was recognition. And it burned Tyson more than a comeback could have. People felt it immediately. The laughter drained into unease. 2 teenage boys in the front row dropped their grins. A child on his father's shoulders whispered, "He's not scared." Security at the tunnel shifted, bracing for a fight that felt suddenly real. The referee cut the tension with a sharp command, "Corners." His arm swung, signaling the timekeeper. The crowd's noise surged, a storm of expectation and nerves. Tyson spat on the mat, pacing, fists clenched. He muttered into the mic just loud enough for it to bleed into the speakers, "I'll show you what era this is." His teeth gleamed under the lights, but his eyes gave away the heat, too bright, too hard. Chuck rolled one shoulder back, slow, mechanical, readying without spectacle. The stool scraped as his trainer pulled it clear. His mouth stayed closed. The sentence he had spoken still hung between them, vibrating like a taut wire. In the broadcast truck, the director pointed, "Bell cam. Stay tight." A producer muttered, "Don't cut from his face," meaning Norris's. The boom operator tightened his grip, sensing the shift. The timekeeper raised the mallet. The arena held its breath. Tyson lowered his chin, fists up, a grin stretched wide. The mallet struck brass. And Tyson launched forward like a storm, the roar of the crowd tearing upward, while Norris stepped forward once, calm, as if walking into silence that refused to break. The bell hadn't finished ringing when Tyson crossed the canvas, shoulders rolling, fists already speaking. The first jab snapped out, sharp and dismissive, testing. Chuck didn't counter, didn't flinch. His head slipped an inch and the glove caught only air. The crowd roared. The canvas thudded under Tyson's footwork as he pressed forward, throwing another jab, then a hook to the body. Chuck's elbows closed in tight, his stance compact, every movement minimal. He looked less like a man fighting than like one solving a problem in real time. Tyson grinned. He feinted low, then cracked a right hand toward the head, a shot meant to rattle. Norris leaned, rolled his shoulder, and the glove brushed past, grazing nothing. The restraint, his refusal to lash back, was louder than any blow. Tyson pressed harder, looking for a corner, his footwork cutting off escape. The crowd screamed with every rush, smelling a finish. But just as Tyson thought he trapped him, Norris pivoted once, neat and clean, leaving Tyson punching at air and facing a turnbuckle. The crowd gasped, then roared, the noise uneven, nervous. Tyson corrected quickly, pushing forward again, firing hooks and straights. The shots hammered at guard and ribs, but Norris absorbed them, eyes steady. Then Tyson committed, shoulder dipped, fist launched with full weight. It was the kind of punch that had ended careers. Chuck slipped inside, not away. The glove cut past his cheekbone by inches. In the open lane, Norris extended a straight punch, short, direct, unflashy, into the hinge of Tyson's jaw. The sound was dull, unimpressive, but Tyson's head snapped slightly, eyes blinking without permission. His back foot skated to find balance. The arena froze for a heartbeat. It wasn't a knockout. But it wasn't supposed to land at all. Then came the eruption. Shouts tangled, half disbelief, half awe. A man clutched the apron, a boy screamed wordlessly from his father's shoulders. 2 teenagers filming dropped their phones, stunned. Tyson shook it off, rolling his jaw, expression sharpening. The smirk had thinned. He threw a furious flurry, hooks to the body, a right upstairs, left across the guard. Norris moved like water around rocks, rolling, blocking, letting gloves skid and slide. Then, in the blur, he stepped on Tyson's lead foot for half a beat, subtle, unnoticed except by Tyson, anchoring him long enough that the next punch lost its base. Tyson's eyes flashed as he ripped his glove free. The cameras caught everything. Split-screen replays magnified Tyson's face, pupils wide, jaw clenched, disbelief seeping through. The production truck blasted it onto the jumbotron. The crowd saw it too and responded like a storm breaking open. Tyson circled again, less bounce, more calculation. He jabbed hard, twice, then buried a right to the ribs that forced a grunt from Norris. It was the first sound the mics had stolen from him all night. For a moment, Tyson looked satisfied. But then Norris planted, let Tyson chase, and baited the overhand right. Tyson lunged, hungry, and Norris slipped inside once more, driving a short punch through the center. Tyson's head jerked, his stance shifted wrong, his balance not his own. He didn't fall, but he stumbled half a step, and that half step was enough. The crowd exploded. Chuck! Chuck rose from one side, boos from the other, colliding into chaos. People were on their feet, phones flashing, arms waving. The arena had stopped being an audience and become a participant. Tyson's face said it all. The bravado was gone, replaced by something more focused, more dangerous. He smiled, a thin, deliberate smile, and muttered into the hot mic without meaning to. "Okay. Now I see you." The words bled into the speakers, carried to every corner of the building. The chant grew louder, almost defiant. The referee barked a warning for clinching that hadn't happened, desperate to keep order, but no one heard him. The cameras locked tight on both faces, Tyson, a predator suddenly cautious, Norris, breathing calm, eyes cold, saying nothing. Then, from the upper tiers, one voice cut through the storm, sharp, clear, impossible to ignore. "Respect." The arena wavered, hanging in the silence after that word. Tyson twitched. Chuck's expression didn't change. And the fight, everyone realized, had only just begun. Tyson came out of the first exchange with his pride nicked, and that cut was deeper than the punch itself. His grin thinned, his breathing sharpened, and he began to stalk, no longer pacing but driving forward with the weight of a man unwilling to be embarrassed. Each step thudded against the canvas, the sound echoing through the microphones like a drumline. He launched a combination without pause, jab, hook, right hand, fast enough to rattle. Sweat flew from his arms in arcs under the spotlights. The front rows winced as if the force might leap across the ropes. Tyson pressed, relentless, body shifting low to high, hunting for an opening he believed had to exist. Chuck didn't fight the fire with fire. He didn't chase or flinch. His feet whispered across the canvas in small adjustments, shoulders tilting just enough that Tyson's gloves found forearm, tricep, or air. His breathing stayed steady, his eyes never leaving Tyson's shoulders. Every movement looked like subtraction, cutting away waste, letting Tyson spend himself against nothing. The crowd swelled with it. Some screamed Tyson's name, demanding the storm to break through. Others, noticing the older man's calm, began to clap and chant for Norris. The sound fractured the building, half riot, half cathedral. Tyson snarled, a sound the mics caught and magnified. He muscled forward, chest first, bullying Norris toward the ropes. A hook to the ribs landed heavy, earning a grunt, and the grin returned to Tyson's face. He swung again, chasing the same shot, but Norris angled a step back, let the glove crash against elbow, and slid inside. Tyson's next right hand, meant for the chin, lost its line and skimmed shoulder instead. The split screen on the jumbotron showed the story, Tyson's body burning with aggression, Norris quiet and unmoved, saving energy while the younger man threw it away. A section in the upper tiers, once laughing, now clapped each time Norris slipped clear. What had begun as a spectacle was becoming a split allegiance. Frustration twisted Tyson's movements. His punches shortened, tightened, hammering the guard like someone battering a locked door. He barked over the noise, stand and fight. His voice cracked higher than intended, raw with strain. Norris gave no answer. He parried a wrist, nudged a glove off course, and forced Tyson to reset. His silence pressed harder than any insult. The crowd leaned into it. Tyson, battled Chuck across the bowl, the chants colliding into a storm. You could see people switching mid-chant, surprised at themselves. Tyson doubled his jab, snapping Norris's head slightly with the second, then ripped a right hand that hammered the sternum. The sound cracked through the hall, real and solid. For a moment, it looked like Tyson had turned the tide. But Norris stayed upright, chest steady, eyes still locked. He touched Tyson's arm once, almost casual, and moved back to center. That tiny gesture rattled more than the body shot. Tyson roared, slamming gloves together, his grin stretched but brittle. He stormed forward again, throwing in volume, jabs and hooks flying. Norris ducked under a looping shot, slipped left, and Tyson's glove swished along his ear with nothing behind it. Norris didn't counter. He just let the miss hang in the air. The crowd gasped. Silence hit harder than any punch. In the stands, someone screamed, "Finish him." Another yelled, "Stand your ground." A child asked, "Is he okay?" and no one knew who the question meant. Tyson's mouthguard ground between his teeth. His voice tore through the speakers, "Fall already, old man." The pitch betrayed a tremor. The cameras zoomed, catching the flicker of unease under the fury. Norris stared straight back. His eyes, flat and steady, told a truth Tyson didn't want spoken: "You can't break me." The referee hovered, muttering, "Work out, keep clean," but the fighters had stopped hearing. The ring had shrunk to a telephone booth. Tyson reset, shoulders tight, and prepared to end it. He doubled the jab, then loaded the right with everything left in him, hips and back twisting, ready to smash through once and for all. The first jab struck, stinging. The second blinded. The overhand right came down like a hammer dropped from height, fast, heavy, final. And Norris moved. Not backward, but inward, slipping into the pocket inside the arc of the blow. In one step, Tyson's haymaker found only air, his chest brushing Norris's shoulder, his momentum spilling forward. The arena's breath caught. The bell hadn't rung yet, but everyone felt the air tilt. They knew the moment of truth was no longer seconds away. It was here. Tyson's right hand scythed over nothing and his chest clipped Norris's shoulder. The crowd shouted one sound, then another, then realized they'd made no sound at all. Norris was inside the arc, breath steady, hands quiet. Tyson stumbled a half step to reclaim balance, pivoted on the ball of his foot, and jammed a short left toward the ribs out of reflex. It met forearm, not flesh. Norris's elbow bit down, hips turning, windshielding the shot away. The arena recalibrated to the new distance, close enough to smell the canvas glue, close enough to hear the gloved leather rasp across tape. Camera 2 drifted in, gyro whining, glass swallowing sweat beads. On the jumbotron, Tyson's eyes flickered with something that wasn't fear but knew where fear lived. He chose noise. "Come on, old man, fall," he barked, too loud, voice bending up at the end. The microphone picked the tremor up and sent it everywhere at once. People in the upper deck heard it and lowered their cups. Down by the apron, a man in a satin jacket whispered, he felt that, and didn't say which he. Tyson tried to bully the air back into obeying. He drove Norris with forearms and shoulders, compacting space like a man forcing a suitcase shut. Short hooks hissed past ears, a right grazed crown, tearing sweat into a halo. Norris didn't answer with volume. He trailed Tyson's centerline, taking half steps that smudged the angle, letting power blows flatten to glancing taps. His jaw stayed soft, his breathing never left that shallow, regular cadence the camera mics kept failing to turn into drama. The chant fractured. Tyson, hit from the floor, Chuck, answered from high, clashing mid-bowl, turning into a raw electric hum. The ring was no longer a stage. It was a pressure cooker. Tyson feinted, jabbed twice, and buried a right hand into the sternum again, mean, efficient. It thumped a sound that carried to the rafters. Norris's body took it, his feet didn't. He sank a half inch, then returned to level, eyes fixed. Tyson watched for the flinch that usually comes after that kind of contact. It didn't arrive. His lips peeled back from the mouthguard in something that wanted to be a smile and missed. "Dodge this," he hissed, and slung a hook meant to pull the head off the line. Norris's shoulder rolled, the glove skated along the slope and left nothing behind but heat. He didn't counter. He let Tyson hear the miss. That silence was worse than a slap. It made the arena hold a breath it couldn't replace. The referee hovered at the edge of the clinch, one hand half raised, voice low and tight, "Work out, keep it clean." Nobody answered. Tyson dug short uppercuts, trying to pry the chin up. Norris's hands turned those into taps against bone instead of hinge, then slid a palm across Tyson's wrist just long enough to make the next punch late. It was nothing that sells replay packages. It was everything that sells truth. Tyson spoke again, now to himself as much as to the room. "Fall," he said, quieter, not quite a command, more like a wish rubbed raw. He stuffed another body shot into the pocket. Norris folded an elbow, absorbed, stepped off on the heel like a craftsman making room for a tool, and the crowd, half drunk, half sober, recognized it all at once. This wasn't a sprint to violence. It was a lesson given under lights. The arena's sound changed shape. Laughter and jeering had evaporated 2 rounds ago, now even the cheers had thinned into a concentrated buzz. A woman in sequins pressed fingers to her lips. 2 teens in matching caps dropped their phones to watch with their eyes. Up near the press row, a columnist stopped typing mid-sentence, listening for something he didn't yet have a word for. Tyson gambled. He stepped outside Norris's lead, toes hunting for that sweet angle, and fired a right-hand left hook pair that had served him since the heavy bag first answered his questions. The right found shoulder, the hook started to find chin. That was the crack Norris stepped through. He didn't turn the hook aside with force. He brushed it with a knuckle and shifted his weight so quietly that Tyson's arm finished the swing on its own. For an instant Tyson's chest opened, his weight pulling forward. Norris's right hand nudged the bicep, not a strike, an edit, and in that thin corridor of time he moved first, not faster, just first. He didn't take the head. He punched the lane beneath it, that sternum Tyson had been proud to pound. A short, mean straight, 6 inches of message. Tyson's breath stalled. His eyes flared, confused at the way the world had paused without asking him. The crowd rose like wheat in wind. People weren't cheering a hit, they were cheering an idea finding proof. "Chuck! Chuck!" swelled from one side, boos tried to answer and got lost. Someone shouted, "Finish him," and didn't sound like they wanted blood so much as closure. Tyson refused the narrative. He set his feet again and threw a combination that didn't involve thinking, jab to blind, hook to move guards, the overhand time to the heartbeat. The jab ticked nose. The hook kissed glove. The overhand fell like it had a job. Norris's red came earlier than the shoulder. He was watching hips. He slipped in the thickness of a breath, head moving to the safe side while his left hand touched Tyson's triceps to inform him that the lane was closed. Tyson's fist found elastic air. The crowd groaned as one massive organism that had expected collision and got geometry. Tyson shouted, higher than before. "Fall." He sounded as if he were arguing with a locked door. Norris looked directly into his eyes, level and quiet. Something in that look did what a flurry had not, it made Tyson take a small step he hadn't planned. The Jumbotron caught it from 3 angles. The building noticed. Then the pause arrived, the real one. A held tick of time with no sound in it. Even the rigging seemed to stop humming. The ref's lips formed a word he didn't say. The timekeeper glanced at the clock and forgot what numbers meant. Tyson broke the silence first because he didn't know what to do with it. He lunged, a decision born not of plan but of refusal to be contained. His overhand looped wider this time, greedier, drawing a bright arc under the lights. He was betting everything on force like a man pushing all his chips on a number that looked lucky. Norris met him. Not retreated, met him. A half step that cancelled the swing's radius. His right foot set like a nail, His left hand checked Tyson's elbow with the subtlest pressure, his own right arm aligned in a straight line from heel up through hip, shoulder, knuckles. The crowd stood in a single human motion. The sound built without bursting, a turbine about to take the sky. Somewhere, a child whispered, "Now." Tyson's glove was still traveling when Norris's counter started, shorter distance, less theater, more truth. Tyson's weight was still coming forward. The arithmetic of impact was about to choose sides. And the arena, sensing the math before it saw the outcome, tipped into that suspended state crowds get only a few times in their lives: absolute attention, absolute silence, absolute certainty that what came next would rewrite the room. The ref leaned in. The cameras tightened, lenses breathing. The boom mics trembled on their poles. Norris's shoulder snapped the last inch. Tyson's jaw turned the last inch. And every throat in the building opened to a shout that hadn't yet decided whether it would be triumph or terror. The punch landed with a dull thud that cut through the noise. Tyson's head turned slightly, his legs buckled, and for a second he seemed to sit down on nothing before his body spilled sideways to the canvas. The ropes shivered. The crowd broke into a scream so raw it sounded like metal tearing. Chuck stayed planted, glove still lifted, breathing calm. He didn't chase, didn't finish, he had no need to. The referee rushed between them, dropping to his knees at Tyson's side. The count began. Tyson blinked hard, fighting to gather himself. He rolled to one knee at 4, gloves sliding against the mat. At 6 he forced a foot underneath him, swaying, chest heaving. The ref studied his eyes, tugged his gloves, and shook his head once. Arms spread wide, the signal. The fight was over. The arena exploded. Not the usual roar for blood, but something stranger, half relief, half disbelief. Thousands rose at once, hands in the air, some screaming, others crying. A chant of "Chuck! Chuck!" caught from the upper tiers and swept down, ragged and imperfect but unstoppable. Tyson's corner jumped in, catching him as he leaned against the ropes. His face carried no anger now, only shock and fatigue. Through the towels and hands around him, he looked once toward Norris. A small nod, stiff, reluctant, but real. Chuck answered with the same. He didn't lift his arms. He didn't climb a rope. Instead, he raised his palms to the crowd at chest height, motioning them down. The gesture calmed pockets of noise, then whole sections, until the chaos softened into a steady hum. He took the mic only when the silence was thick enough to hear it. "Legends don't rust," he said. "They just wait for their moment." The word spread like fire. Not shouted, not dramatic, but carried by a room that had chosen to listen. Some fans laughed through tears. Others just stood, stunned, their phones lowered, watching with eyes instead of screens. Tyson sagged into his corner, shaking his head, his team supporting him. He looked across again, not broken but stripped of the invincible mask he'd worn. The cameras caught his face, disbelief etched beside respect. Reporters leaned dangerously over the apron. Fans in the front row clapped until their hands were red. Security stopped moving, realizing there was nothing to control anymore. The referee lifted Chuck's wrist. The official announcement boomed, drowned by the ovation already shaking the rafters. Commentators searched for words, timing, discipline, upset, but none of them landed. The story had already been written by silence, not by statistics. Chuck didn't celebrate. He crossed to Tyson's corner and placed a glove gently on his shoulder, brief and respectful. Tyson didn't smile, but he didn't flinch either. Another nod, smaller this time. The wide camera showed the ring from above, scuffed canvas, one corner frantic, the other still. Norris stood alone in the center, calm, as if the storm around him had never touched him. People would argue about the punch, whether it was reflex, experience, or luck. They would clip it, slow it down, post it everywhere. But the ones inside the arena would remember the moment after, when thousands held their breath together and discovered that silence could be louder than any roar. The music finally played, low and almost shy. The lights hesitated before brightening. Nobody rushed to leave. Fans lingered in their seats, holding on to the feeling that they'd just witnessed something that belonged less to sport and more to history.